The stars had watched Earth for billions of years. They had seen the mountains rise and fall. They had seen the oceans form and the first simple life crawl from the water onto land. The stars had waited, as they always did, for something special to happen on that small blue world spinning in the dark. On 1,000 other planets across the galaxy, life was also growing. But it was slow, very slow. On a world called Vexus Prime, small creatures with 6 legs had just learned to make simple sounds to each other. On Kelthar 7, beings that looked like floating jellyfish had discovered that working together made it easier to find food. On the great ocean world of Drenna, fish-like creatures had grown their first legs and were thinking about crawling onto the rocky shores. These aliens were young. They had millions of years of growth ahead of them before they would look up at the stars and wonder what was out there. But humanity was different. Commander Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the starship Prometheus as it dropped out of faster-than-light travel near the Andromeda Galaxy. She was 62 years old, though the medical treatments available to humans in the year 4847 made her look no older than 30. Her dark hair was tied back in a simple ponytail, and her gray eyes reflected the light of 1,000,000,000 stars through the main viewing window. "How long?" she asked her navigation officer. Lieutenant Chen looked up from his console. "We have traveled 2.5 million light-years in approximately 4 hours, Commander. All systems are working perfectly." Elena nodded. 4 hours. Just 4 hours to cross the great empty space between galaxies. She remembered reading about the early days of human space travel, when people thought going to their own moon was an impossible dream. That was over 3,000 years ago now. "Begin mapping," she ordered. "I want to know what is out there." The crew of the Prometheus got to work. They were explorers, part of the great human mission to understand the universe. Behind them, across the vast darkness of space, the Milky Way galaxy was already full of human colonies. Billions of people lived on thousands of worlds, from the frozen moons of distant gas giants to artificial habitats floating in the warm light of red dwarf stars. Humanity had done all of this in just 3,000 years. It seemed like a long time when measured in human lives, but it was nothing compared to the age of the universe. The cosmos was nearly 14 billion years old. In all that time, across all those billions of years, no other species had managed to do what humans had done. They had tried to understand why. Dr. James Wright was the chief scientist aboard the Prometheus. He was a thin man with white hair and glasses that he did not actually need. The glasses were a habit, a way of connecting to the scientists of old Earth who had worn similar things. He sat in his laboratory, surrounded by screens showing data from across the known universe. "There should be others," he said to himself, as he had said many times before. "The math does not work. Life is everywhere. We find it on every planet that can support it. So where is everyone else?" This question had bothered humanity for a very long time. The Fermi paradox, they had called it in the old days. If the universe was so big and so old, why had humans not found any other intelligent species? Now they knew the answer. They had found life on almost every world they visited, but none of it was intelligent. None of it had built cities or made tools or looked up at the stars and wondered. Humanity was alone, not because life was rare, but because intelligence was. On the bridge, Elena received a message from one of the scout ships that had gone ahead of the Prometheus. The pilot, a young woman named Yuki Tanaka, sounded excited. "Commander, we have found something amazing. A planet in the habitable zone of a yellow star, very much like old Earth. And there is life here, complex life." Elena felt her heart beat faster. What kind of life? "Land animals, many different kinds. Some of them are quite large, and Commander," Yuki paused, "some of them are using tools." The bridge fell silent. In 3,000 years of exploration, humans had found bacteria on millions of worlds. They had found plants and simple animals on thousands. They had found complex ecosystems on hundreds, but they had never found tool users. "I am coming there myself," Elena said. "Do not make contact, just observe. I will be there in 20 minutes. She walked quickly to the shuttle bay, her mind racing with possibilities. Could this be it? Could they have finally found another species on the path to intelligence? The shuttle carried her across the star system at speeds that would have seemed like magic to her ancestors. She looked out the window at the planet growing larger ahead of her. It was beautiful, with blue oceans and green continents and white clouds swirling in the atmosphere. When she arrived, Yuki was waiting for her in orbit. Together, they used the ship's powerful sensors to look down at the surface. Elena saw forests and grasslands and mountains. She saw rivers cutting through valleys and a great lake that reflected the yellow sun. And she saw the creatures. They walked on 4 legs, with 2 more limbs that they used like arms. They had large heads and forward-facing eyes, which suggested they were predators or at least omnivores. Their bodies were covered in short brown fur, and they stood about 1 meter tall. A group of them was gathered near a river. One of the creatures picked up a rock and used it to crack open something that looked like a large nut. It shared the food with a smaller creature beside it, perhaps a child. "Stone tools," Elena whispered. "They are in their stone age." Yuki nodded. "We estimate their intelligence level is similar to early hominids on Earth, maybe like Homo habilis about 2 million years ago." Elena did the math in her head. 2 million years. That was how long it had taken for humans to go from using simple stone tools to standing here, watching another species begin the same journey. "They have no idea we are here," she said quietly. "They look up at the stars and see nothing but lights in the sky. They do not know that one day they might travel to those stars themselves." "Should we contact them?" Yuki asked. Elena thought about it for a long time. Humanity had argued about this question for centuries. If they found another intelligent species, what should they do? Some people thought they should help, share their technology and knowledge. Others thought they should stay hidden and let the new species develop on its own. "No," Elena said finally. "Not yet. They are not ready. We would change them too much, too fast. They need to make their own mistakes and learn their own lessons. That is how we did it, and look at what we became." She looked down at the creatures by the river. The one with the rock had finished eating and was now teaching the younger one how to use the tool. It was a simple action, something humans had done millions of years ago. But it was also the beginning of everything. "Mark this planet as protected," Elena ordered. "No human ship is to come within 1 light year of this system. We will watch from a distance, but we will not interfere. In 1 million years, maybe 2, these beings might be ready to meet us. We can wait." Yuki looked surprised. "1 million years is a very long time, Commander." Elena smiled. "Not for us, not anymore." She was right. Humans had learned many things in their 3,000 years among the stars. One of the most important was how to extend their lives. Elena herself had already lived for over 200 years, and she expected to live for many more. The oldest living human was nearly 1,000 years old and showed no signs of slowing down. Time was something humans had plenty of now. The shuttle carried them back to the Prometheus, and Elena called a meeting of the senior staff. She told them what they had found and what she had decided. Dr. Wright listened carefully. When she was finished, he spoke. "Commander, this is the first tool-using species we have ever found. Are you sure we should not study them more closely?" "We will study them," Elena said, "but from a distance. I will not risk changing their development. We have seen what happens when a more advanced culture meets a less advanced one. Even with the best intentions, the weaker culture is always damaged." She thought of the history of old Earth, of all the times when powerful nations had tried to help smaller ones and only made things worse. Humans had learned from those mistakes, but the lessons had been hard. These creatures deserve the chance to become what they are meant to become. she continued. Not what we think they should be. Maybe in 1,000,000 years they will be our equals. Maybe they will be our friends. Or maybe they will be something completely different, something we cannot even imagine. Either way, it should be their choice. The meeting ended, and the crew of the Prometheus continued their mission. They mapped new star systems and discovered new wonders. They found planets made entirely of diamond and stars that had been dead for billions of years. They found clouds of gas 1,000 light-years across, slowly forming into new suns. But they did not find any more tool users. The creatures on that small planet remained the only other intelligent species humans had ever discovered. Back in the Milky Way, the news of the discovery spread quickly. People were fascinated by the creatures they now called the Primi, from the Latin word for first. Scientists studied the recordings from the Prometheus and tried to understand how the Primi thought and lived. Some people wanted to help them. They argued that it was cruel to leave the Primi in their primitive state when humans could give them so much: medicine, technology, knowledge of the universe. Why should the Primi suffer through millions of years of slow development when humans could lift them up right now? But most people agreed with Commander Vasquez. The Primi needed to find their own way. Humanity had done it alone, and that was why they were strong. If the Primi were given everything without earning it, they would never become truly great. And so humanity waited. They watched the Primi grow and change over thousands of years. They saw them learn to make fire and build shelters and plant crops. They saw them form villages and then cities. They saw them fight wars and make peace. Through it all, humans stayed hidden. They were patient. They knew that one day the Primi would look up at the stars and start asking questions, and when they were ready, humanity would be there to answer. Lieutenant Chen looked at his console and frowned. Something strange was happening with the sensors. "Commander," he said, "I am detecting an unusual energy signature. It is coming from the outer edge of this galaxy." Alina walked over to look at the readings. Her experience told her immediately that this was important. The energy pattern did not match anything humans had ever seen before. "Natural or artificial?" she asked. "I cannot tell," Chen admitted. "It is very strange, almost like it is hiding itself." Alina made a quick decision. "Change course. I want to see what this is." The Prometheus turned and accelerated toward the unknown signal. As they got closer, the readings became clearer. This was definitely not natural. Something was out there, and it was not human. "Commander," Dr. Wright said from his station, "I think we may have just found what we have been looking for." Alina felt a chill run down her spine. After 3,000 years, was humanity finally about to meet its match? The stars had watched Earth for billions of years. Now they were about to show humanity that it was not as alone as it thought. The Prometheus moved carefully through space as it approached the strange energy signal. Every sensor on the ship was working at full power, trying to understand what they were seeing. Commander Alina Vasquez stood at the center of the bridge, her hands clasped behind her back. She had been an explorer for over 100 years, and she had seen many strange things, but nothing like this. "What are we looking at?" she asked Dr. Wright. The scientist shook his head slowly. "I honestly do not know. The energy readings do not match any known technology. It is not fusion power or antimatter or zero-point energy. It is something completely different." "Could it be natural?" "No, the patterns are too regular, too organized. This is definitely artificial. Someone made this." Alina felt her heart beating faster. For 3,000 years, humans had searched the universe for signs of other intelligent life. They had found simple creatures on many worlds, but nothing that could challenge them. Nothing that could match their own achievements. Until now. "How old is it?" she asked. Dr. Wright ran some calculations. "Based on the decay patterns and the distance from any star, I estimate this object has been here for at least 500 million years, maybe longer." 500 million years. When this thing was built, life on Earth had barely crawled out of the oceans. Humans would not exist for hundreds of millions of years still, and yet someone had been here in this distant galaxy building things. We need to get closer, Alina decided, but carefully, very carefully. The ship crept forward. As they got nearer, the object began to take shape on their screens. It was enormous, easily 1,000 kilometers long. Its surface was smooth and dark, almost black, and it seemed to absorb the light from distant stars rather than reflect it. "It looks like a ship," Lieutenant Chen said, "but it is not moving. It might be dead." "Or it might be waiting," Dr. Wright added quietly. Alina considered their options. They could turn back and report what they had found. That would be the safe choice. But she had not spent her life exploring the stars by making safe choices. "Launch a probe," she ordered. "Nothing aggressive, just a simple sensor package. Let us see what we can learn." The probe shot away from the Prometheus and headed toward the massive object. As it got closer, it began sending back data. The object was made of materials that humans had never seen before. Its structure was incredibly complex, with patterns within patterns that seemed to go on forever. Then, when the probe was about 100 kilometers away, something happened. The object woke up. Lights appeared along its surface, thousands of them, blinking in strange patterns. The energy signature that had first attracted their attention grew 100 times stronger, and a voice came through the communication system. It was not a human voice. It was not even a voice made of sound. It was something else, a direct transmission of meaning straight into their minds. Everyone on the bridge gasped as the message filled their thoughts. "You have found us. After all this time, you have found us." Alina steadied herself against a console. The sensation was overwhelming, like having someone speak inside her own head. But she was commander of this ship, and she had a duty to perform. "Who are you?" she asked out loud, not sure if the being could hear her. It could. "We are the Keepers. We have watched this universe since it was young. We have waited for someone like you." Dr. Wright stepped forward, his scientific curiosity overcoming his fear. "Watched? From where? For how long?" "From the beginning. We are old, older than your stars, older than most galaxies. We existed when the universe was still hot and bright, before matter had cooled enough to form worlds." Alina tried to understand what this meant. The universe was nearly 14 billion years old. If these keepers had existed from the beginning, they had been around for almost all of time itself. "Why are you here?" she asked. "What do you want?" "We want nothing. We need nothing. We simply exist and we watch. Long ago we learned that intelligence is rare, very rare. In all the billions of years we have watched, we have seen countless species rise and fall. Most never left their home worlds. Many destroyed themselves. A few reached the stars, but none of them lasted. None of them grew strong enough to matter." The voice paused, and Alina felt a sense of vast age and loneliness in that pause. "Until you." Lieutenant Chen looked at his screens. More data was coming in from the probe, showing details of the ancient ship that made no sense. It was not built like any machine he had ever seen. It was almost like it had grown rather than been constructed. "What do you mean, until us?" Alina asked. "In 14 billion years, humanity is the first species to spread across a galaxy and continue growing. You have not destroyed yourselves. You have not stagnated. You continue to expand, to learn, to reach farther than anyone before you. This makes you unique." Dr. Wright was taking notes frantically. "There must have been others. The universe is so big, so old. We cannot be the only ones." "You are correct. There have been others. Thousands of species reached intelligence. Hundreds developed technology. Dozens achieved space travel, but all of them failed one way or another. War, disease, environmental collapse, simple bad luck. The universe is dangerous and intelligence is fragile. You are the first to survive long enough to become truly powerful." Alina felt a weight settling on her shoulders. She had always known that humanity was alone in the universe, but she had assumed it was because they were early, not because they were special. Learning that thousands of species had tried and failed made her feel a strange mix of pride and sadness. "Why did they fail?" she asked, "and why did we succeed?" "Many reasons. Some species were too aggressive. They spent their energy fighting each other instead of reaching for the stars. Some were too peaceful. They never developed the technology needed to leave their worlds. Some were unlucky. Their stars exploded or asteroids struck them or disease wiped them out. Intelligence alone is not enough. You need intelligence and drive and caution and luck, all in the right combination. And we had that combination. Yes, your species is not the strongest or the fastest or the smartest we have ever seen, but you have something that the others lacked. You never give up. Even when things seem impossible, you keep trying. You adapt. You survive. This simple quality has made you the masters of your galaxy." Alina thought about human history. All the wars, all the disasters, all the times when it seemed like humanity would destroy itself. The plagues and the famines and the nuclear weapons that had almost ended everything. But they had survived. They had always survived. "What happens now?" she asked. "Why have you shown yourself to us?" "Because you are ready. For billions of years we have waited for a species that could take our place. We are old now, very old. We have seen everything we wish to see and done everything we wish to do. Soon we will rest. But before we do, we wanted to meet you. We wanted to see the species that will inherit the universe." The crew of the Prometheus was silent. The idea was almost too big to understand. These ancient beings, these keepers who had existed since the dawn of time, were passing the torch to humanity. "We do not want to inherit anything," Alina said carefully. "We are explorers, not conquerors." "Good, that is exactly why you are worthy. The others who reached this far always wanted power. They wanted to control, to dominate. You want to learn. You want to understand. This is what makes you different." The lights on the ancient ship began to pulse in new patterns. Data started flowing into the Prometheus, more information than the ship's computers had ever processed before. "We give you our knowledge, everything we have learned in 14 billion years. It will take you many centuries to understand it all, but you have time. You have earned this gift by being who you are." Dr. Wright stared at the incoming data with tears in his eyes. He could see formulas and theories and discoveries that answered questions humans had been asking for thousands of years. The nature of dark matter, the origin of consciousness, the true structure of the universe at its deepest level. "This is incredible," he whispered. "This changes everything." Alina watched the exchange with a mix of wonder and worry. "We cannot just accept this. We do not know what it will do to us." "You are wise to be cautious, but we mean you no harm. We have watched your species for a long time, since before you existed. We saw your ancestors learn to walk upright. We saw them make their first tools. We saw them spread across their world and then across their star system and then across their galaxy. We have been cheering for you all along." The voice carried a warmth that surprised Alina. These vast, ancient beings had watched humanity grow from simple apes into a galactic civilization. They had been observers, silent supporters, waiting to see if humans would succeed where all others had failed. "Why did you not help us?" she asked. "You could have made our path easier." "Would that have helped? The strength you have comes from overcoming challenges. If we had given you technology or protected you from danger, you would never have developed the qualities that make you special. You needed to struggle. You needed to fail and try again. That is how you became strong." Alina thought of the Primi, the tool-using creatures they had found on the other planet. She had made the same choice herself, deciding not to interfere with their development. She understood now that the Keepers had done the same thing with humanity. "What will you do now?" she asked. "We will rest. We have been awake for so long, watching and waiting. Now our task is complete. We have found a successor. We have passed on our knowledge. There is nothing more we need to do." The lights on the ancient ship began to dim. The energy signature that had first attracted them was fading. "Wait," Elena said urgently. "There is so much more we want to know. About you, about where you came from, about what you have seen. Everything we know is now in your computers. We have hidden nothing. Study it, learn from it, and become greater than we ever were. That is our final wish." The lights went dark. The energy signature vanished. The massive ship, 1,000 kilometers of ancient technology, became cold and silent once again. Lieutenant Chen checked his instruments. "They are gone, Commander. Whatever was powering that thing has stopped. It is just a dead shell now." Alina looked at the dark object floating in space. Beings that had existed since the beginning of time had just given humanity the keys to the universe. It was the greatest gift anyone had ever received. "Take us home," she said quietly. "We have a lot of work to do." The Prometheus turned and headed back toward the Milky Way. Behind them, the ancient ship of the Keepers drifted silently in the darkness between galaxies. Its builders had finally found peace after 14 billion years of watching and waiting. Humanity had been tested and found worthy. Now it was their turn to guide the future. Back on Earth, in the great meeting halls where humanity's leaders gathered, the news from the Prometheus caused an uproar. Some people were excited about the new knowledge. Others were afraid of what it might mean. Everyone had an opinion about what should happen next. Commander Vasquez stood before them all and made a simple statement. "We did not ask for this responsibility, but it has been given to us. The Keepers watched 1,000 species rise and fall. They chose us to carry on because we never gave up, because we always kept trying. We cannot betray that trust. We must use this gift wisely, not for conquest or power, but for the benefit of all life in the universe." She paused and looked at the faces around her. Politicians and scientists, soldiers and artists, people from every part of human civilization. The Primi are still on their planet, learning to use stone tools. In 1,000,000 years, they might be like us. There may be other species out there that we have not found yet, species just beginning their journey toward the stars. We are not alone anymore. We are the guardians of a universe full of potential. The hall was silent as her words sank in. "Let us make the Keepers proud." 500 years passed. In the life of the universe, this was nothing. In the life of humanity, it was a transformation. The knowledge given by the Keepers changed everything. Scientists who had spent their careers trying to understand a single problem suddenly found answers to questions they had never thought to ask. Engineers built machines that seemed like magic. Doctors cured diseases that had plagued humanity for millennia. But the greatest change was not in technology, it was in understanding. Humanity learned that the universe was not empty or hostile. It was a garden, carefully tended by the Keepers for billions of years. Every galaxy, every star, every world had been watched and protected. The Keepers had guided cosmic events, nudging asteroids away from promising planets and calming suns that might have exploded too soon. They had done this for 14 billion years, waiting for someone to take their place. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood at the window of her office on Station Unity, humanity's largest orbital habitat. Below her, Earth turned slowly, its blue oceans and green continents visible through gaps in the white clouds. It was still beautiful, even after all these years. Sarah was 340 years old, born in the early days after the Keeper contact. She had dedicated her life to a single purpose, preparing humanity for its new role as guardians of the universe. "The Council is ready for you, Ambassador," her assistant said from the doorway. Sarah nodded and walked toward the meeting chamber. Today was an important day. After centuries of debate and preparation, humanity was finally ready to take the next step. The council chamber was filled with representatives from every human world. There were delegates from the ancient colonies of Mars and Europa, from the newer settlements around distant stars, and from the great generation ships that traveled between galaxies. They came in person or appeared as holograms, but they all shared the same serious expression. "Thank you all for coming," Sarah began. "As you know, we have reached a decision point. For 500 years, we have studied the knowledge the Keepers gave us. We have built new technologies and expanded to new galaxies, but we have not yet taken up the responsibility they left us." She touched a control, and a holographic map of the known universe appeared above the table. Billions of galaxies sparkled like diamonds on black velvet. The Keepers protected and guided this universe for 14 billion years. They kept worlds safe from cosmic disasters. They ensured that conditions for life remained stable. They did all this while staying hidden, never interfering with the natural development of the species they protected. Sarah pointed to a small region of the map. "This is where we are. Humanity has spread across several galaxies now, but compared to the whole universe, we are still tiny. The Keepers want us to do what they did, to watch over all of creation and help life flourish wherever it appears." A delegate from the Andromeda colonies raised his hand. "With respect, Ambassador, is this even possible? The Keepers were ancient beyond our understanding. They had billions of years to develop their abilities. We are still children compared to them." "That is true," Sarah admitted. "But the Keepers did not ask us to replace them immediately. They asked us to grow into the role. They gave us the tools and the knowledge. The rest is up to us." Another delegate spoke up. "What about the Primi? They have been making progress, I hear." Sarah smiled. This was her favorite part of the discussion. "Yes, the Primi have grown faster than we expected. 500 years ago, they were using stone tools. Now they have developed bronze working and built their first cities. Their development is still thousands of years behind ours, but they are moving forward." She changed the display to show the Primi homeworld. The planet had changed since Commander Vasquez first discovered it. Where there had been scattered groups of primitive hunters, there were now kingdoms and trade routes and temples to gods the Primi had imagined to explain the mysteries of their world. "We continue to watch them without interfering," Sarah said, "just as the Keepers watched us. One day, perhaps in another 100,000 years, they will be ready to join us. Until then, we protect them from dangers they cannot see." The debate continued for hours. Some council members thought humanity should move faster, taking full control of the guardian role as quickly as possible. Others worried that they were not ready, that they might make mistakes that would harm developing species. In the end, they reached a compromise. Humanity would begin expanding the network of protection systems the Keepers had left behind, but they would do it slowly and carefully. Every decision would be reviewed by a council of ethicists and scientists. No developing species would be contacted until they had achieved interstellar travel on their own. As the meeting ended, Sarah felt a weight lift from her shoulders. Humanity had finally committed to its destiny. They would become what the Keepers hoped they could be, guardians of a universe full of possibility. She returned to her office and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, on a million worlds, life was growing and changing and reaching toward awareness. Most of those life forms would never become intelligent. Some would develop simple tools and then go extinct. A few might build civilizations that lasted thousands of years. And one day, if humanity did its job well, some of those civilizations might join them among the stars. "It is a big responsibility," she said to herself, "but someone has to do it." Her assistant appeared at the door again. "Ambassador, there is an emergency message from Outpost 7 in the Sculptor Galaxy. They have detected something unusual." Sarah frowned. Outpost 7 was one of the furthest human installations from Earth, nearly 12 million light-years away. What could be happening there? She opened the message and felt her heart skip a beat. The outpost had detected an energy signature similar to the one the Prometheus had found 5 centuries ago. But this one was not ancient and dormant. This one was active. Sarah immediately contacted the council members who had just left. Within minutes, they were all connected again, their faces showing the same shock she felt. "This is not possible," one delegate said. "The keepers told us they were the last of their kind. They said they were going to rest." "They told us they were going to rest," Sarah corrected. "They did not say all of them. Perhaps some keepers chose not to sleep. Perhaps there are others who were away when the Prometheus made contact." The implications were enormous. If there were other keepers still active, humanity was not alone in its guardian role. They might have allies who could help them, teachers who could guide them. Or they might have rivals who disagreed with the original keeper's decision. "Send a diplomatic team," Sarah ordered. "Our best people. Tell them to approach carefully and make peaceful contact. We need to know who we are dealing with." The team left within a day, traveling at speeds that would have seemed impossible before the keeper knowledge. They reached the Sculptor Galaxy in just a few hours and began searching for the source of the energy signature. What they found was not what anyone expected. It was not a keeper ship. It was something else entirely. Captain Marcus Young led the diplomatic team. He was a veteran of 100 first contact situations, though none of them had involved actually meeting another intelligence. When his ship approached the source of the signal, he saw a structure unlike anything in the Keeper archives. It was organic. Where the Keeper ship had been smooth and mechanical, this thing was rough and alive. It pulsed with energy like a beating heart. Tendrils extended from its central mass, reaching toward nearby asteroids and absorbing them slowly. "What is that?" his second officer whispered. Marcus shook his head. "I have no idea, but it is definitely not a Keeper." He tried to make contact using the communication methods the Keepers had taught humanity. At first, there was no response. Then, after nearly an hour of attempting different frequencies and formats, something answered. The voice was not like the Keeper voice that Commander Vasquez had described. It was rougher, more emotional, and it carried a sense of desperate hope. "You came. After so long, you finally came." Marcus steadied himself. "We are humans from the Milky Way galaxy. We received your signal and came to investigate. Who are you?" "We are the remnant. We are what is left of a species that failed. We have been waiting for the Keepers to return and save us. Please, you must help us." Marcus exchanged glances with his crew. This was not in any briefing or protocol. A species that had failed. What did that mean? "Explain," he said. "We want to understand." The voice grew sad. "Long ago we were like you. We built cities and ships. We reached the stars. We thought we would live forever, but we made mistakes, terrible mistakes. We destroyed our homeworld and most of our people. The survivors merged their minds with machines to survive, becoming what you see now. We are not truly alive anymore. We are memories, echoes of what we once were." "How long have you been here?" "Nearly 2 billion years. We were one of the species the Keepers watched. They tried to help us, but we did not listen. By the time we understood our errors, it was too late. Now we drift through the universe, barely conscious, waiting for someone to end our suffering or give us a second chance." Marcus felt a deep sadness wash over him. 2 billion years of waiting, of loneliness, of regret. It was almost impossible to imagine. "The Keepers are resting now," he said gently. "But they gave their responsibility to us, to humanity. We are the new guardians of the universe." The remnant was silent for a long moment. When it spoke again, its voice trembled with something like hope. "You are the ones they chose, the species they believed in. We have heard stories of you. The Keepers spoke of a young race that might one day take their place. We never thought we would live to see it." "We are still learning," Marcus admitted. "We are not sure we are worthy of the trust the Keepers placed in us, but we are trying our best." "That is all anyone can do. Will you help us? We do not ask for much, just a chance to rest finally after so long. The keepers would not grant us death because they hoped we might one day recover. But we know now that we never will. We are too damaged, too broken. We just want peace. Marcus thought about the Primi growing and developing on their distant world. He thought about humanity's promise to protect developing species and to honor the Keeper's legacy. But this was different. The remnant was not developing. It was dying slowly over billions of years. The kindest thing might be to let it go. I cannot make this decision alone, he said. I need to consult with my people, but I promise you we will find an answer. One way or another we will help you. Thank you. After 2 billion years, that is more than we dared hope for. Marcus ended the communication and sat back in his chair. His crew looked at him with uncertain eyes, waiting for guidance. Send a message to Earth, he said finally. Tell them what we have found, and tell them that being guardians of the universe is more complicated than we thought. The message traveled across 12 million light years in seconds, thanks to Keeper technology. When it arrived, it sparked another debate that would last for decades. What did humanity owe to the failures of the past? How should they treat species that had destroyed themselves? Was it mercy to grant them peace, or was it giving up on the possibility of recovery? These were questions the Keepers had never fully answered. Now they were humanity's questions to solve. And solve them they must, because the universe was full of stories like the remnants, full of species that had reached for the stars and fallen short, full of regret and hope and endless possibility. Humanity had conquered the galaxy while aliens were still learning to walk. Now they had to learn how to help the ones who had stumbled along the way. It was the hardest challenge they had ever faced, and they were determined to succeed. 1,000 years after the Prometheus first made contact with the Keepers, humanity gathered for the greatest celebration in their history. From every corner of every galaxy where humans lived, they came. Trillions of people, connected by networks that spanned the universe, watched as a single event unfolded on a small blue planet in an unremarkable star system. The Primi were launching their first rocket. Ambassador David Okafor stood on an observation platform hidden in the clouds of the Primi homeworld. Below him, in a valley surrounded by mountains, thousands of Primi had gathered to watch their greatest achievement. Their civilization had grown incredibly in the last 1,000 years. They had cities of stone and metal, libraries full of knowledge, and now they had built a machine that could carry them beyond their atmosphere. This is it, David said to his team. After all this time, they are finally ready. The Primi rocket was crude by human standards. It was made of iron and copper, powered by a primitive chemical fuel that produced more smoke than thrust. But it was their creation, built from their own ideas and their own hard work. Humanity had not given them anything. The countdown began in the Primi language. David had learned to speak it over the centuries, one of many humans who had dedicated their lives to studying this remarkable species. 3, 2, 1. The rocket roared to life. Flames shot from its base as it rose slowly into the air. The Primi crowd cheered, their six-limbed bodies jumping with excitement. Some of them fell to their knees in prayer to their gods, thanking the divine beings they believed had blessed this moment. David felt tears in his eyes as he watched the rocket climb higher and higher. It would not reach orbit today. It would barely make it past the atmosphere before falling back to the ground. But it was a beginning. "We were there once," he whispered. "We stood on the edge of everything and reached for the stars." The rocket disappeared into the clouds. The Primi scientists below were already planning their next attempt, talking excitedly about improvements and modifications. They had no idea that ancient beings watched them from above, proud of every step they took. Back on Earth, the celebration continued for days. People toasted the Primi and shared stories of humanity's own first flights. They remembered the early astronauts who had risked everything to leave their world, and they saw the same courage in these furry, six-limbed creatures who were just beginning their journey. But not everyone was celebrating. In a quiet meeting room on Station Unity, Ambassador Sarah Chen met with Captain Marcus Young. They had both aged greatly since their first encounters with the wider universe. Sarah was now over 800 years old, and Marcus was not far behind, but their minds were still sharp, and their concerns were real. "The remnant situation is getting worse," Marcus said. "More of their units have gone dark over the last century. Whatever keeps them alive is failing." Sarah nodded sadly. "The Council still has not made a decision. Some members think we should honor their wish for death. Others believe we should try to heal them, even if they do not want it." "And you, what do you think?" Sarah was quiet for a long moment. "I think we cannot make this decision for them. The Keepers let species develop on their own because they believed in free will. If the remnant wants to end their existence, we should respect that choice. Even if it means losing 2 billion years of history, of knowledge. Even then, what good is knowledge if it is kept against the will of those who hold it?" Marcus sighed. He had spent decades talking with the remnant, learning about their culture and their mistakes. They had been a passionate species, full of emotion and creativity, but they had also been reckless. They had built weapons that destroyed their atmosphere and fighting machines that turned on their creators. By the time they realized their errors, most of their population was dead. The survivors had merged their consciousness into biological machines, hoping to outlast the damage they had caused. But existence without purpose had driven them slowly mad. After 2 billion years, they were barely recognizable as the beings they had once been. "They told me something last week," Marcus said. "They said they were glad to meet us before the end. They said it gave them hope that the universe would continue without them." Sarah smiled softly. "That is beautiful in a sad way. I think we should grant their request, not because we want them to die, but because it is the right thing to do. They have suffered long enough." The Council voted a month later. After centuries of debate, they finally agreed. The remnant would be allowed to rest. The ceremony was simple. Marcus traveled to the Sculptor Galaxy one last time and spoke with the fading consciousness of the remnant. "Are you sure?" he asked. "This cannot be undone." "We are sure. Thank you for understanding. Thank you for caring enough to ask." Marcus activated the device that the remnant had shown him. It was a shutdown sequence built into their core programming, a way to end their existence peacefully. They had never been able to use it themselves because the Keepers had disabled that function, hoping they might recover. Humanity had found a way to restore it. The remnant began to fade. The pulsing energy that had sustained them for 2 billion years grew dim and then went out entirely. The organic structure that had been their home collapsed in on itself, becoming just another piece of space debris. Marcus watched in silence, then quietly he spoke. "Rest well. You deserved better than what happened to you. Maybe in the next universe you will have another chance." He did not know if there would be a next universe. He did not know if consciousness could survive the death of everything. But he hoped, for the remnant's sake, that something waited for them on the other side. The news of the remnant's passing spread across human civilization. Some people mourned. Others felt relief that the long-suffering species had finally found peace. Everyone understood that this was part of being guardians of the universe. Sometimes, the kindest thing was to let go. Life went on. The Primi continued their slow advance toward space. Other species were discovered on distant worlds, still in their early stages of development. Humanity watched them all, protected them from cosmic dangers, and waited patiently for them to grow. 2,000 years after the Keeper contact, something remarkable happened. On a world called Thessaly 7, in a galaxy far from the Milky Way, a species called the Veth invented faster-than-light travel. They were tall, thin beings with 4 arms and skin that changed color with their emotions. They had developed independently of human influence, growing from simple farmers to star travelers in just 50,000 years. When their first interstellar ship left their home system, it found a human vessel waiting for it. First contact specialist Ana Rodriguez was chosen to be the one to meet them. She was young by human standards, only 160 years old, but she had trained her whole life for this moment. The Veth ship approached cautiously. Its captain, a being named Keller, did not know what to expect. Their astronomers had detected signs of advanced technology in distant star systems, but they had never imagined meeting its creators. "Greetings," Anna said through a translation device. "We are humans. We have been waiting for you." Keller's skin shifted through several colors, finally settling on a deep blue that indicated surprise. "Waiting? How could you know we would come?" "We have been watching your species for a long time. We saw your first cities, your first machines, your first rockets. We knew you would reach this point eventually." "You watched us. Why did you not contact us sooner?" Anna smiled. "Because you needed to grow on your own. If we had given you technology, you would never have developed the skills to use it wisely. You needed to make your own discoveries, learn from your own mistakes." Keller considered this. The Veth were a thoughtful species, slow to anger and quick to understand. This human philosophy made sense to them. "What happens now?" Keller asked. "Now we welcome you to the community of intelligent species. There are not many of us yet, just humans and a few others who have reached the stars on their own. But every year, there are more. One day, the universe will be full of civilizations working together." Keller's skin turned a warm gold, the Veth color of hope. "We have always dreamed of meeting others. We always hoped we were not alone." "You are not alone. You never were. We were here all along, watching and waiting. And now we can finally be friends." The Veth and humans exchanged knowledge and culture over the following centuries. The Veth taught humanity new forms of art and music that no human had ever imagined. Humanity shared the history of the Keepers and the responsibility they had inherited. The Veth were shocked to learn that humans had been masters of the galaxy for so long. Their own history was only 50,000 years old. The idea that another species had traveled the stars for 5,000 years before they even invented writing was humbling. But they were also proud. They had earned their place among the stars through their own efforts. No one had given them anything. That made their achievement real. "You could have helped us," Keller said to Anna during one of their many conversations. "You could have made our path easier." "Yes," Anna admitted. "And sometimes we wondered if we should. When we saw your people suffer from diseases we knew how to cure or fight wars we could have prevented, it was hard not to intervene." "Why did you not?" "Because those struggles made you strong. You learned to cure your own diseases and make your own peace. If we had done it for you, you would always have depended on us. Now you are our equals, not our children." Keller thought about this for a long time. Then his skin turned the brilliant white of understanding. "You are wise, wiser than we knew. We thank you for your patience." Anna shook her head. "Do not thank us. We were not always wise. We made many mistakes in our own history. We almost destroyed ourselves many times. The only reason we are here is that we never gave up, even when giving up would have been easier." "That is the lesson, then. Never give up." "Yes, that is the lesson." The Veth spread out across their region of the galaxy, building colonies and exploring new worlds. They found other developing species and made the same choice humanity had made. They watched and protected without interfering. The community of intelligent species grew larger with each passing millennium. 3,000 years after the Keeper contact, there were a dozen star-faring civilizations working together. 5,000 years later, there were 100. Each one brought new perspectives and new ideas, enriching the whole. And through it all, humanity remained the guardians, the first among equals. the species that had conquered the galaxy while others were still learning to walk, and had used that power not to dominate but to nurture. The Keepers had been right to choose them. They had seen something in humanity that even humans did not fully understand, something that made them worthy of inheriting the universe. Now, with each new species that joined the community, that worthiness was proven again. Humanity had not just survived, they had helped others survive too. It was the greatest achievement in their long history, and it was only the beginning. 10,000 years after Commander Elena Vasquez first saw the ancient ship of the Keepers, humanity gathered for a different kind of celebration. The Primi were joining the stars. Their ships were elegant now, sleek vessels that combined the best of Primi engineering with knowledge they had developed over 100,000 generations. They still had 6 limbs and fur-covered bodies, but their eyes held the same wonder that human eyes had shown when they first reached beyond their world. Ambassador Chen Wei stood on the deck of the human flagship, watching the Primi fleet emerge from their home system. He was the direct descendant of the first Ambassador Chen, carrying on a family tradition that stretched back millennia. His job today was one his ancestors could only have dreamed of. He was welcoming the Primi as equals. "This is Ambassador Chen Wei of the Human Alliance," he said through the communication system. "On behalf of all intelligent species in the known universe, I welcome you to the stars." The Primi commander, a being named Tora, responded with visible emotion. Her species had developed a complex language of body movements along with their spoken words, and every part of her expressed joy and gratitude. "We have wondered about you for so long," she said. "Our legends speak of beings who watched over us, who protected us from dangers we never saw. We thought they were gods." Chen Wei smiled. "Not gods, just friends you had not met yet. Friends who waited 100,000 years for us to be ready." "Yes, because true friendship is patient." The Primi fleet joined the human vessels, and together they traveled toward Station Unity, which had grown over the millennia into a structure larger than most moons. Representatives from every known intelligent species were waiting there to greet the newest members of their community. The Veth were there, their color-changing skin rippling with excitement. The crystallines of Theta Persei hummed their welcome through vibrating crystal bodies. The thought singers of the Andromeda Deep projected emotions that needed no translation. Dozens of species, each unique, each precious, each earned their place among the stars through their own effort. And at the center of them all stood humanity, the first, the guardians, the ones who had shown that patience and hope could bridge any gap. Chen Wei escorted Tora through the station, introducing her to the other species. Each meeting was a wonder. The Primi had never imagined such diversity, such creativity, such different ways of thinking and being. "How many are there?" Tora asked as they walked through a garden designed to accommodate a dozen different atmospheres. "At last count, 247 intelligent species have joined our community, but we are always finding more. The universe is very big and life is very persistent. And you watch over all of them, even the ones who have not reached space yet. We watch, we protect, we wait. Some species will join us in 1,000 years, others will take 1,000,000, some will never make it, but we give them every chance to succeed." Tora was quiet for a moment, processing this information. Then she asked the question that Chen Wei had expected. Why do you care so much about species you have never met?" Chen Wei led her to a viewing window that looked out at the stars. Billions of points of light, each one a sun, many of them orbited by worlds where life was growing. "Because someone cared about us," he said. "Long ago, when humanity was young and alone, beings called the Keepers watched over us. They protected us from dangers we never knew existed. They could have helped us more directly, but they knew we needed to grow on our own. When we finally met them, they told us why they had waited so long. They said we needed to struggle to become strong. And now you do the same for others. Yes, not because we have to, because it is right. Every species deserves the chance to become what they can be. Every species deserves the same patience that was shown to us. Tora's body language shifted to something Chen Wei had never seen before. He later learned it was the Primi expression for profound respect. "We will remember this," she said. "We will pass this lesson to our children and they will pass it to theirs. One day, when another species reaches the stars, we will welcome them as you have welcomed us. That is all we ask. That is the only payment we need." The celebration continued for weeks. The Primi shared their art and their music, their philosophy and their science. They were a creative species, full of ideas that even the most ancient civilizations had never considered. In return, they received something priceless: membership in a family that spanned the universe. Months later, Chen Wei received a visitor in his private quarters. The being that appeared before him was not physical. It was a projection, a communication across distances that would take light millions of years to cross. It was a keeper. Chen Wei felt his heart stop. The keepers had gone to rest 10,000 years ago. No one had heard from them since. "Do not be afraid," the keeper said. Its voice was gentle, nothing like the booming presence that Commander Vasquez had described. "I have been watching from far away. I wanted to see what you would become. We thought you were all asleep. Most of us are, but I chose to stay awake a little longer. I wanted to see if we had made the right choice." Chen Wei straightened. "And did we?" The keeper was silent for a moment that seemed to stretch forever. Then, slowly, it spoke. "You exceeded our hopes. In all our billions of years, we never imagined that our successors would be so kind. We protected life because we felt obligated to. You protect life because you love it. That makes all the difference. We learned from your example. No, you learned from your own heart. We showed you what was possible, but the compassion came from within you. That is why you are worthy." Chen Wei felt tears forming in his eyes. To hear such words from beings who had existed since the dawn of time was overwhelming. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now I join my siblings in rest. Our task is truly complete. The universe is in good hands." The projection began to fade. Before it disappeared entirely, the keeper spoke one last time. Thank you for being who you are." Then it was gone. Chen Wei stood alone in his quarters for a long time, thinking about what had just happened. The keepers had watched humanity for billions of years, hoping they would become guardians of the universe. And they had. Not just guardians, but caretakers who loved every species they protected. It was the highest praise imaginable, and it came with the greatest responsibility. The years turned into centuries, and the centuries into millennia. The community of intelligent species continued to grow. Each new member brought new challenges and new opportunities. Some species were easy to work with. Others were difficult. A few almost destroyed themselves before they could be helped. But humanity never gave up on any of them. 100,000 years after the first keeper contact, humans gathered to witness something that had never happened before. A species that had failed, like the remnant, was being given a second chance. The Kesari had destroyed their world 50,000 years ago through warfare and environmental collapse. Unlike the remnant, they had not merged with machines. Instead, a small group of survivors had fled to a moon of their gas giant neighbor and lived in underground caves, barely surviving. Humanity had watched them rebuild. Slowly, painfully, the Kesari had learned from their mistakes. They had developed new philosophies of cooperation and sustainability. They had healed their society from within. Now, 50,000 years later, they were launching their first ship to the stars. Admiral Sarah Chen VII, a descendant of the original Ambassador Chen, watched the Kesari vessel rise from their moon. It was a humble ship, not much more impressive than the Primi rocket of so long ago. but it represented something incredible. A species that had fallen had picked itself back up. "This is why we do what we do," Sarah said to her crew. "Not just to protect species from external dangers, but to give them the chance to recover from their own mistakes. The Kesari failed once. Now they are trying again, and we will be here to help them succeed." The Kesari ship crossed the boundary into interstellar space. A human vessel moved to meet it, beginning another chapter in the endless story of life reaching for the stars. In all the galaxies where humans had traveled, similar scenes were playing out. Species awakening to consciousness, species building their first tools, species looking up at the stars and wondering what was out there. Humanity watched them all, protected them all, loved them all. And in the vast spaces between galaxies, the keepers slept peacefully, knowing that their legacy was in the best possible hands. The universe was full of life, and life was full of hope. From the simplest bacteria on the youngest world to the most ancient civilization spanning 1,000 galaxies, every being was part of a great story that had no end. Humanity had conquered the galaxy while aliens were still learning to walk, but their greatest achievement was not conquest. It was kindness. It was patience. It was the understanding that every species deserves a chance to reach its full potential. The stars had watched Earth for billions of years. Now humanity watched the stars, protecting the countless worlds where new stories were just beginning. And somewhere, on a small blue planet in an unremarkable star system, children still looked up at the night sky and dreamed of what might be out there. They did not know that their ancestors had answered that question long ago. They did not know that humanity had become the guardians their distant descendants would one day be grateful for. They just knew that the stars were beautiful and that anything was possible. That simple belief, that unshakable hope, was what had brought humanity this far, and it would carry them forward forever into a future brighter than any star.